you remember this close encounter I had last week with Mrs. Thatcher?
It's treated sewage, of course. It's not untreated. It's treated. It's been
We also have a lot of outfalls that take raw sewage into the sea and are still building them.
Well, it should be treated sewage that goes out. Treated, all of it. That's still, I think you'll find that it's treated sewage.
Of course, it depends what you mean by treated. Most water authorities mash or strain some sewage before dumping, but it's still raw. The truth is, all over the country, a number of water authorities are pumping raw sewage, untreated in any way, straight into the sea. Grant Mansfield reports.
They call themselves the Sons of Neptune. Others call them eccentric. Either way, they've become a highly effective, if rather unorthodox, conservation group. They're dedicated to cleaning up Britain's beaches. They claim the Prime Minister. This week, the Sons of Neptune headed for the House of Commons with a plea to end the discharge of untreated sewage into the sea. Police on the River Thames were having none of it. The protest came to a premature end, but it did serve further notice that the tide of public opinion is turning. Britain's transition from seafaring to seafouling nation has gone far enough.
We are fighting for the right of every man, woman and child to swim in the sea without fear of disease. And we expect our government to adopt the same fight and do what we are doing. They have no choice now. They have to spend the money and they have to put it right.
Bude on the North Cornish coast, famous for its surf, notorious for its sewage. At high tide, it provides a picture postcard image of the traditional British seaside. At low tide, an image the government and the water authorities would rather we didn't see. It's equally traditional, though. For generations, Britain has been discharging untreated sewage into the sea. A third of Britain's beaches fail to meet EEC standards. Bude is one of them.
I blame the water authorities and also the government as well, because I think far more money should have been spent on cleaning up beaches. After all, Bude's main claim to fame is its beaches, and surely we could have clean beaches. We deserve that.
The government is committed to bringing beaches up to EEC standards by 1995. But it was in 1975 that the European community imposed those standards. The water authorities have now begun multi-million-pound programmes to update their antiquated sewage systems. Critics say they should have addressed the problem years ago.
Well, I mean, it isn't a question of course we've addressed it. It's a question of
but
making...
you haven't done anything about it.
Well, of course we haven't. We haven't had the money to do it because there's a strict limit on the amount of money that you can spend.
So are you blaming the government, then, for your inability to be able to spend this money?
I'm not necessarily blaming the government, but the policy of the government is that they won't let us borrow money. And as a consequence of that, we're not able to do all the work we'd like to do and as quick as we'd like to do it.
Bude sewage outfall is one of hundreds around Britain's coastline. Much of what we pump into the sea is untreated. Tests carried out at Bude this week confirm this stuff is raw sewage. To comply with EEC bathing directives, it would need to be diluted 4,500 times.
It's my understanding that it is government policy to encourage, if not promote, the disposal of raw sewage through long sea outfalls to the marine environment. And so I was very surprised when the Prime Minister said that it was not policy to discharge untreated sewage. It is in fact the policy of the Department of the Environment to encourage the disposal of raw sewage to the marine environment through long sea outfalls.
While the Prime Minister appears confused about what constitutes treated sewage, the water authorities worry about paying for improvements. Cleaning up Britain's beaches by 1995 may be beyond them.
How long is it going to take for you to get all your beaches up to the standard that you obviously want, but quite obviously can't afford?
I've not the faintest idea, quite honestly. But don't answer that because I don't know, but it's going to take a long time.
In the meantime, raw sewage will remain a feature of much of the 5,000 miles of Britain's coastline. There's no disputing it looks disgusting, but the Water Authority insists it's perfectly safe to bathe at Bude.
It's quite clear that there is a large amount of contamination of coastal seawater around Britain with raw sewage. And in fact, the government are sufficiently concerned about that to be talking about commissioning research to find out whether or not that represents a major health risk.
Would you bathe in the water here?
I would certainly not bathe in the water at Bude as we've seen it today, and there are many other resorts where I would not bathe either.
The job of cleaning up Britain's beaches will soon pass to a privatised water industry. Buying a stake in that industry has been likened to buying a house without any drains. Replacing the country's inadequate sewage systems will cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Water charges will probably have to rise to meet those costs. The government isn't going to pay, so the customer will have to.
We'll be back at the same time next week.